Thank you so much for being here and being a part of this conversation. This session is all about highlighting stories, and we want to highlight your story. So if you could just do a quick intro, who are you, what do you do, and how do you do it?
Thanks for having me here. Um, my name is Jeff Kangacha. First and foremost, I am a fourth generation smallholder farmer. I am a social entrepreneur and I'm a technology enthusiast. I co-founded the Eden Horticultural Hub, which is a social enterprise that's focused on controlled environment agriculture, specifically how smallholder farmers can adopt aquaponics and hydroponics so that they can transition from depending on rain-fed systems.
Okay, buzzwords, aquaponics, hydroponics, Jefferson. If you are not in food systems and you don't know what they're, please explain for people in the crowd.
Absolutely. So to give you a background, so I grew up in central Kenya where I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who has been a great smallholder farmer. But I realized there were changes with her farm. Her soils weren't necessarily working. She could no longer depend on the rains because the seasonal patterns had changed. And so I was looking at how I would transition her practices in a manner that would still allow her to produce food and get her income without necessarily worrying about seasonal patterns. And so I was looking at how some agricultural technologies could be applied to the kind of work she was doing. And so I went to high school about 200 miles east of Nairobi, and I became a student farm manager in my school, and I became an apprentice of the school's farm director, who had demonstrations with greenhouses. And so using the greenhouse technologies, I got to learn about technologies where you could grow food without soil using nutrient solutions in greenhouses. And then I went back and replicated the same, which is what is hydroponic farming, where I worked with local artisans to repurpose plastics. And we made whole greenhouse unit and grew food in nutrient solutions in it for my community.
That sounds like such incredible work, right? It's community-based, it's on the ground. And you mentioned that you are a fourth-generation smallholder farmer. And I just wanted to highlight how smallholder farmers, especially in the African context, provide 70% of our food. So in that context, what do you think and how do you think we can bring forth these stories of smallholder farmers and people within the global south and their contexts into climate conversations and really highlight those?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost is to, underscore why we're here, which is, climate action. And I think of smallholder farmers as frontline workers in climate action. Secondly, I also think of smallholder farmers as key players within food and agricultural systems. And over time, their place and role has often been ignored. And so what I'm thinking is restoring the sovereignty of smallholder farmers within food and agricultural systems. Why is that important? Statistically, all the food that we eat in the world is produced by about 2% of our population. And bearing in mind that we have populational pressures, especially for sub-Saharan Africa, where the population is growing rapidly, we need to see how smallholder farmers can be able to produce food prosperity beyond focusing on the sustainability of our agricultural and food systems.
How do you think we do that?
I think the first part is by looking at how are farmers accessing information, and secondly, how are farmers accessing finance. If you look at globally the percentage of unbanked communities, smallholder farmers are the highest percentage. And so if we are able to restructure our global financing systems to make sure they work for smallholder farmers in the informal settings, then that way we'll have been able to solve a huge part of the problems within the food systems. Secondly, agricultural extension systems as a means through which farmers access information. Therefore, if we are able to meet farmers at their point of need and customize technologies in such a way that they're able to access the latest information, the latest research within our institutions, that way then we're also able to give them the necessary knowledge and tools to make sure they're growing food in the right way and in a manner that's sustainable to both the planet and to feeding humanity.
Thank you, Jefferson, for answering that so eloquently. And just to bring it back to the COP context, right? We know that for the first time ever, food systems are very high up on the COP agenda, and there's been some great strides made from the Emirates Agreement and Declaration, from the non-state actors call, and people jumping onto those. How do you think all these funds and all these pledges that are being made then translate to people on the ground?
I think the main message I have right now, and has been the call, I think, in the last few COP sessions, is we need to move beyond hope to action. I think in terms of policies that have been developed, they're fantastic, but we need to see how they're actually working, on the ground. We need to see political goodwill, particularly. And I think in the context, particularly of sub-Saharan Africa, I've been pretty encouraged by how some of these initiatives and global policies are being decentralized, and how political systems are willing to take up these policies and figure out how they can be implemented in the lowest administration levels. And I think that's the fast way that work can begin on the ground.
And how can people here support that?
I believe one way we can support farmers is by working together with them in terms of getting to involve them in decision-making tables. I think one of the fundamental challenges that I've seen in agricultural policies, specifically like in my home country, Kenya, is they are made within policy-making institutions, but the voice of the farmers does not get there. So I mean, one strong way of making sure that change happens within the food systems is the voice and the opinions of farmers make it to decision-making tables.
And I think a lot of farmers from your context in Kenya and sub-Saharan Africa holistically would be really grateful to have a young person with so much insight, right? And so much insight and cognizance as to what's happening on the ground, and having a duality to existing in spaces like these, like COP, and representing the best interests of those on the ground. So thank you so much, Jefferson. What would be your parting words for everyone here?
I think one thing that I'd like to focus on again is the role of smallholder farmers in the food system, and focusing again on their sovereignty. With the advent of industrial agriculture, with the advent of mechanization, there's a possibility that the voice of smallholder farmers might be suppressed because they do not have that capacity. So within our individual institutions, within our own countries, if we can amplify the voices of smallholder farmers, not to be overshadowed by like the growing use of technology, the industrialization and the aggregation of all these tools, policies and spaces, that will be a great place to start. More importantly, I think I cannot underscore this enough. Sustainability is not enough without shared prosperity. So as we push for smallholder farmers, as we push for sustainability of our ecosystem, sustainability of our agricultural and food systems, it is also important to champion for a sense of prosperity for all of them.
Thank you so much, Jefferson, for being a part of this conversation and fireside chat. We had to quickly adapt before this. Jefferson was supposed to be in conversation with a young change maker and climate activist, Eliane, who's also from Kenya. And we just want to highlight some of her work with a video that's going to be shown. Thank you.
That's good.
That's the one.
A dedication. This story is for children whose futures have been stolen by malaria. Chapter 1. The Perfect Storm. An angry sun, erratic skies, cyclones, floods of a cosmic size, thirsty land, falling trees, the perfect storm for spreading disease. Chapter 2. A shaky home.
A seguir ao ciclone, eu e a minha irmã adoecemos. Quando chegamos ao hospital e vimos tantos doentes como nós, a mãe não queria acreditar no que via. Disse, chegou a malária.
And that's just one story. Chapter 3, The Swarm.
हमारे घर के साथ साथ तमाम गांव पानी में डूब गया था। हर तरफ पानी ही पानी था और रात होते ही हर जगह मच्छरों के झुंड उमड़ आए थे।
And there are millions more stories like this one. The mission to reach zero malaria is getting harder. Changing weather, health emergencies, and other threats are creating the perfect storm for deadly diseases like malaria.
It can't end like this.
If we act now to protect ourselves from threats to our lives, land, and planet, we can change the story for millions of children all over the world.
It's time to change the story. Will you?
I think it's so inspiring to have young people really championing causes like these. I mean, if you look at the Zero Malaria campaign, which Eliane is a part of, it is the impact that malaria has. It's one of the world's oldest and deadliest diseases, right? And climate change has huge impacts on that. So it's really inspiring to see that young people are at the forefront and really wanting to be a part of the solutions and the change. So thank you, Jefferson, and thank you to Eliane in absentia. We will have the next session in just about a minute, and I will introduce that. Thank you, everyone.